Okay, this is an introduction to lesson 35, and the topic is called decimals to fractions. So, what we're talking about is taking a number, maybe a number that's written in words, writing it as a decimal, then as a fraction, or maybe having a decimal and then changing it back to a fraction and vice versa. Now, we've been talking about lately the use of the place value chart. And what I have on the screen is the place value chart. So I want you to take a look at this and notice to the left of the decimal point, so you can see the decimal point there, I have ones, tens, hundreds, and then it keeps on going. So after hundreds you have thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, and so on. Now to the right of the decimal point, notice all these words end in THS, meaning it's a decimal. It's to the right of the decimal point. So I have tenths, hundredths, thousands, 10,000s, and so on. So we want to keep this place value chart in mind as we're thinking of these problems. Now, if you recall, and we'll talk about this, furthermore, but you have a copy of your place value chart, so make sure you reference that. All right, let's take a look at example 1. Now what we're going to do in example 1 is it says write as a fraction. So what I have is 3 examples of decimals. Now let's take a look at the first one. So in the first one I have 0.1. Now how am I going to write that as a fraction? Well, you'd write it as a fraction by looking at the far right digit. So look at the 1 here. What place is that far right digit in? And the answer in that, using your place value chart, is it's in the tenths place. So since it's in the tenths place, then I just put a 1 above a 10. So in other words, 0.1 is the same thing as 1/10. And really, that's how I would read this decimal. The proper way to read this decimal isn't 0.1. It would be to read it as 1/10. You look at the far right digit and you read it as what place that digit is in. Now let's take a look at the second one. Now in the second one, what place is the far right digit in? What place is the 1 in? Now remember, it goes tenths, hundredths. So this would be 21 hundredths. And that's it. Now on all these here, we want to make sure also that if they direct us to put these in lowest terms, we need to do that. Now 21 over 100, that is in lowest terms. I can't divide them both by 2, 3, 4, 5, or anything through 10. All right, let's look at the last one. Now same technique. I look at the far right digit. So remember, it goes tenths, hundredths, thousands. So that far right digit is in the thousands place. So this would be 321 over 1,000. And then I just want to make a quick check of it to see if it's in lowest terms. Both the numbers aren't even, so I can't divide them both by 2. Dividing it by 3, let's see, remember to check the divisibility of 3. Now notice the top number, if I add those digits up, 3 plus 2 plus 1 is 6. Now 3 goes into 6 evenly. Well, 3 go into 1,000 evenly. And let's see, 3 into 10 is 3 times, which is 9. Bring down, which is 3. And it's not going to, is it? Because I keep on getting a remainder. And in fact, 321 over 1,000 is in lowest terms, because I can't divide them both by 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 either. Alright, let's take a look at example 2. Now here we have a fraction, and they want us to write it as a decimal now. So now we're going backwards. So let's take a look at the first one, 3/10. Let's see, 3/10. The top number is in the tenths place. So I write it as 3/10. 17 hundredths. Now I want to make sure my far right digit is in the tenths, hundredths place. So that 7 has to be in the hundredths place, meaning the 1 needs to be in the first place. So 17 over 100 is the same thing as 0.17 or 17 hundredths. Now let's take a look at the third one. The far right digit of 3 needs to be in the thousands place. Tenths, hundredths, thousands. So it goes 3, 2, 1. And this would be 123 thousandths. All right, example 3, it says use words to write the number. All right, now if I were going to, and really when we say words, they're really asking us just to say the number. How would I say the number? And properly, how would I say this number? Well, I look at the far right digit. The 5 is in, let's see, the tenths, hundredths place. So this would be 5 hundredths. And notice I have the THS at the end representing I've got a decimal. I have digits to the right of the decimal point. Okay, the second one, let's see, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So this would be 15 thousandths. And emphasizing the THS at the end. Now the third one's a little different because you actually have a number other than 0 in front of the decimal point. You got a 1. Now the decimal point you would read as and. So the right way to read this decimal would be 1 and, because the decimal point I would refer to as and then the 2 is in the tenths. So 1 and 2 tenths. THS at the end, noting that that 2 is to the right of the decimal point. All right, example 4, it says write as a fraction. So I'm going to underline that. Let's see, write it as a fraction, then as a decimal. All right, so they have these written in words, don't they? All right, let's write it as a fraction first. Let's see, 31 hundredths. Okay, that's not too bad. 31 hundredths, right? Now write it as a decimal, and I'm going to put an equal sign here because all these really are the same. They represent the same thing or same value. We're just writing them in a different format. So let's see, 31 hundredths. If I want to write that as a decimal, I got to make sure that far right digit, or the 1, is in the hundredths place, so the 3 goes right before it, and that would be 31 hundredths. How about the second one? Write it as a fraction first. Let's see, 7 tenths. Okay, 7 tenths. Now as a decimal, I got to make sure my 7 is in the tenths place, and that would be 7 tenths. Okay, I believe example 5 is our last example. It says write as a decimal. So I have 5. Let's see, what's the word and stand for? Decimal point. So 5 and 6. The 6 is in the tenths place. So there we go, 5.6, or 5 and 6 tenths. And the last example, 11 and 12 hundredths. 12. What place does the far right digit, the 2, have to be in? It's got to be in the hundredths place, meaning the 1 goes there. So there we go, 11 and 12 hundredths. All right, so again the topic was fractions to decimals, decimals back to fractions, and various ways or formats to represent numbers.